again, advocate for yourself. That's like the biggest thing. And just like find people with similar stories. Like that was something that was really hard for me in the moment. Like I was scrolling through TikTok as I was being induced, like trying to find similar stories, positive stories. There's really not many out there on HELP. Like even though I'll be scrolling through TikTok and like I'll see somebody comment that they had HELP syndrome and stuff like that, but not a lot of people talk about it.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Birth Story podcast. If you are joining for the first time today, I'm your host, Alexis C. Girl mom, angel mama to one of the sweetest boys in heaven, birth trauma and uterine rupture survivor, and former NICU mama. Here you will have the opportunity to ask and have your burning questions answered by professionals, feel connected to other women's experiences as we normalize the different aspects of this journey we are on as moms. The real and raw moments of healing are shared here as we navigate loss, embrace strength, and find hope again while learning to live after loss. Please note the topics discussed on this podcast are for educational purposes only. Please see your personalized medical professional if you have any questions or concerns that arise from listening, including diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah.
I am so excited for this today. I'm going to be super transparent with you. I've spent the entire morning crying.
Oh no.
I just had one of those days where I woke up, I was cooking breakfast with my family, and it literally felt like the room was coming in on my chest. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
My daughter, she's 5. She's like, I think you need to go outside and breathe some fresh air. So I did, and I was like, okay. And then I just had a good cry. I'm like, this just puts me in like a better space and just, yeah. So I'm excited. Anyways, that's my little spiel today. So I'm like, I got to get ready because I look like hell. Which I know we all have those days. Oh my God. Well, Jamie, welcome to the Beyond the Birth Story podcast. Where are you from?
I'm from Maryland.
Okay. That's one of the coolest parts about this is like obviously get to connect with people right around me, but all around the world, which has been such a special treat. And so, yeah, a little bit about me. I am a lost mom, NICU mom. I'm kind of all the versions of a mom. I've never had a normal pregnancy and or delivery.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I kind of started this space just to connect another version of a community. And it's been, healing on my heart, obviously a little bit heavy at times, but just to connect people and give them a little bit of hope in a space of isolation, essentially, is the very common theme that I've come across, and even for myself, experiencing that. And so, anywhere from loss to just motherhood, pregnancy complications, that kind of thing, which we're going to dive into today. And so to begin, I'll just give you the floor to kind of introduce yourself, whatever you'd like to share, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm Jamie. I'm 25, and I just had my first baby. It was like an unplanned pregnancy, kind of just happened. But everything was like pretty uneventful, you know, like I feel like I had like a pretty like decent pregnancy up until I hit about like 30 weeks or so, and then things kind of just like trickled downhill from there. But like I'm very happy with like how my labor and delivery went, kind of despite everything that had happened. And I 100% think that because of like my care team and like my doctors and midwives, like if it wasn't for them, then like my situation would be completely different. So that's why I'm like very much now a person that like advocates for your physician to advocate for you. Like I think it's very important to have a doctor that cares about you, like just the way you care about yourself. And especially now that I've been like through what I've been through.
That is so important. I cannot agree more. Like having the team, and it's hard to put your faith and your trust in, you know, someone you've essentially never met. You're just choosing them to bring this miracle of life into the world. And especially being a first-time mom, like you don't really have any expectations. And so you do kind of go in blind. And again, I think that's where this sense of community really comes in too. And having people who've been through it, specifically women in these cases, and to kind of give you some insight and help you make those educated decisions and make sure you can trust your team to do absolutely whatever they can, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So leading up to your delivery, is that kind of when things really took a turn?
Yeah, so it started at like 30 weeks or so, and it was just a normal appointment. Like, I hadn't had an ultrasound since my 20-week anatomy scan. Everything had been fine. Like, my midwife was like, your fundal height's a little small, but she wasn't too concerned because so many things can, like, make that difference. So then she was like, we'll just do a growth scan at 32 weeks. So then at 32 weeks, I had my growth scan, and my daughter was measuring pretty small. So she was like 18th percentile, and then her abdomen was in the 11th percentile. And so they were like, we're concerned for IUGR at this point. If either of those numbers drop below 10%, then like that's going to be the diagnosis. And then at 34 weeks, we got the official diagnosis. She had dropped to 12%, and her abdomen had dropped to 2%. So then we were getting monitored twice weekly with the biophysical profile ultrasounds. For 2 weeks that's when we were seen twice weekly, and then it was a week of my 36th week that things kind of really went downhill. It was Monday. I was 35 weeks and 4 days. My blood pressure was high for the second time at one of my prenatal appointments. So they were like, gestational hypertension now. And we were already planning to induce me at 37 weeks because of the IUGR. And at this point, we had gotten some abnormal Dopplers on the ultrasound. So they were like, this is for sure like something wrong with your placenta. So they didn't want to risk me going past 37 weeks. So I was already planning to be induced the following week. However, my blood pressure was high at this appointment. It was only like 140, like over 90 something. So like nothing too crazy, but enough for them to want to send out blood work and stuff like that. So they did that, and it got back that afternoon and everything was normal. Besides, I had a lot of protein in my urine. So then they were like, preeclampsia. However, I had zero symptoms of literally anything at all. So they were like, we'll just keep monitoring this. And thank God I was being monitored twice a week, because I'm not sure if I would have, like, I hope I would have called, like, labor and delivery or something. But I had an appointment on Thursday, and my blood pressure was, like, 157 over 105. And they were like, you got to go to labor and delivery to get blood work done and stuff. And then my blood work was bad. It was, like, my liver values were super elevated. My platelets had dropped, like, almost 30,000 from what they were on Monday. And it didn't quite meet the criteria for HELLP syndrome yet, but my midwife was like, we got to induce you. She was like, I think you're working your way to HELLP syndrome. And then by the time I had my daughter, my blood work had worsened even more. My liver values had almost doubled, and my platelet count had dropped to like 60 something thousand. So they were like, if I wouldn't have been ready to like push her out at that moment, then I would have had to have a C-section at that point. Mm-hmm. But that's just like the gist of like short story of kind of how it all went down and stuff like that. And she was small. She was 4 pounds 15 ounces.
Oh my goodness.
But she's doubled her birth weight now. She's almost 10 pounds, which is crazy. But
she's how old now?
2 months. She'll be 2 months tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. Good for you. She's just packing in the pounds.
It's crazy to think that, like, how I guess like she really was growth restricted. Like, she only gained like half a pound and from like 34 weeks to 36 weeks.
Wow.
So it's not a lot.
Which at that point they're gaining usually 1 pound a week, I think.
Yeah. So she was definitely not thriving.
Yeah.
I'm glad like it all, even despite everything that had happened, I'm glad like I was induced that day.
Yeah. So the IUGR, that's the intrauterine growth restriction. Okay. And do they know why she had that? Or is it because your body was kind of leading up to that HELLP syndrome?
Yeah, so I was kind of under the impression up until my postpartum appointment that it was just kind of something with the placenta that had happened. Mm-hmm. And they had sent my placenta out to pathology just to make sure. And it came back normal. Everything was normal. Besides, it was like a little bit oddly shaped. But other than that, like no abnormal cells, anything like that. But then when I went to my postpartum appointment, my midwife is thinking that like it was due to the underlying HELLP syndrome. She said that usually like you can have HELLP syndrome and like the preeclampsia and it's kind of just laying low, and then it comes apparent at the end of pregnancy. So she thinks that the whole IUGR situation was because of the underlying HELLP syndrome, because I was concerned because I do want more kids, and I was like, if I get pregnant again, is this going to happen to me again? And she was like, it could. And I was like, what about the IUGR? And she's like, we really think that was due to the underlying HELLP. So that's what their impression is that it was due to kind of everything else that was kind of happening in my body. But who knows? And I think sometimes there really is no cause for it besides, like, if there's something wrong with the placenta and stuff like that, or, like, if I had something going on with me. But as far as I know, besides the HELLP and preeclampsia, like, everything was going pretty good for me as far as, like, my health, and then the placenta was fine. So I guess it's something we'll really never know unless it, like, would happen again or something like that.
Which, like, at least next time they will be able to monitor you a little bit closer, right? And kind of look for those symptoms. But that's pretty crazy that you had no symptoms due to, like, your high blood pressure.
I
Like,
had
that is quite high compared to, like, what a normal one is.
Yeah, I had nothing at all. Like, I had like almost no swelling. I had no headaches, like no vision changes, like nothing like that. Now that I'm like thinking back to it, I do think that there were things that I missed that were kind of like little signs here and there. But like no, like the symptoms that they warn you about, like I was heavy on TikTok about like pregnancy complications and like stuff like that. Like I probably should have like deleted TikTok for a point of time. So like into like I was like made myself freaked out. Like I knew what HELLP Syndrome was only because I had like Googled so much stuff and like been worried that like I had it early on in my pregnancy, and then of course like I get it, but literally like heavy on like complications and stuff like that. I knew the signs and stuff to look out for, but didn't like appear to me anything like that. The only thing that like I just didn't feel good the last like 2 weeks of my pregnancy for the most part, like just this overall feeling of not feeling well. And I would get this chest tightness that really freaked me out. But everybody was like, oh, you're at the end of your pregnancy, like all my friends and family. And I never, biggest mistake was probably not mentioning it to my midwife or anything like that. Because by the time I would go to my appointments, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling better. But I should have mentioned it to her because I would get like chest tightness and like lightheaded and just overall like really just not feel well sometimes. And yeah, and I didn't say anything.
Yeah. I think it's hard too, like when you're taught and like through all of your research, whether it's Google or TikTok or whatever platform you're choosing, there's always like what we call these textbook symptoms. And so those are the red flags that you're really looking for. However, our bodies aren't always textbook. And so things can kind of come up differently. And I know we talk to our close friends and family as these things come up, and it's kind of like not complaining, but it's like, oh my God, today, like my chest or whatever. And then in your appointments, I know I always get like so high strung in my appointments that I like forget. And then I'm only answering their questions. And I talk about this on another episode that's coming out of like journaling kind of daily. Like, what were your symptoms? And then they may not be a big thing to you, but if your midwife or your OB/GYN or your physician takes a look and is like, oh, well, you know, given the kind of history of this, it might be leading to this. And so I think that that can be a big thing to help us kind of keep track of those symptoms and, you know, like how things are presenting. When you did kind of all your research for the HELLP syndrome and things like that, what were like the big things, like the explanation of HELP, the signs and symptoms that were posted on TikTok to kind of look for? Because I feel like that's very like, you know, TikTok's a very personable thing. And there's a lot of like actual physicians and stuff on there too, but kind of like layman's terms.
Yeah. So when I was doing my research and stuff, even after the fact, and I had like looked at some stuff and I'm like, maybe I did like feel that way or something like that. Pretty much like they don't know why it happens. It just happens in some women. But signs are like very similar to preeclampsia. And a lot of people, a lot of doctors and physicians think that this is like some form of preeclampsia, just like a severe form of it. So it's really the same sign. So mostly like high blood pressure, protein in the urine, and then headaches, swelling, just overall not feeling well, nausea. A lot of people have like abdominal pain or like in the upper right part of your abdomen from your liver swelling is really what it is. But that's a lot of people feel that pain. So really the same signs of like preeclampsia, but maybe a little bit worse. It's really the blood work that shows it. for your elevated liver values and your low platelets, because it stands for hemolysis, elevated liver values, and then low platelets. And so, yeah, but it's just crazy. Like, a lot of people that I saw on TikTok had a lot of these signs and symptoms, or like had signs of preeclampsia, and they did blood work and then it came up as HELLP. But with me, like, I really had no symptoms at all. Like, and that's when talking to my midwife, she's like, some people do have like this atypical presentation of it, where it's like, you have no symptoms. And with HELLP, you don't even, like, some people don't even have like high blood pressure or stuff like that. They just check blood work and then it comes up, which is even scarier, because if it wasn't for high blood pressure, then I wouldn't have like gotten blood work done or anything like that. But some people just don't have any signs or symptoms, and then it just pops up out of nowhere.
Well, like you said too, with your initial blood work, it was fine, and then you turn around and it's not that long later that all of a sudden it's not fine.
Yeah, and literally at the practice that I go to, they have like 10 midwives or so, and they try to get you in with all of them at one point just so you see them, because one of them will always be there at the hospital. Same with the OBs, but if you're overall having like a somewhat normal pregnancy, then you would see a midwife. And so I saw my midwife that day for my 36-week appointment, and she was like, we're going to send you over to labor and delivery. She was like, I've seen somebody's blood work change in 24 hours, so we just want to be sure. And in my head, I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, I feel fine. And I think like a part of me knew, because I had just packed my hospital bag the night before, and I just like, I don't know. I think I just had this like gut feeling that I wasn't going to be going back home that day. And even like the nurses, when I got to the hospital, like my blood pressure had come down to like somewhat normal for me, like 140s over 90s. And they were like, oh, you're going to go home. And I was like, oh, thank God. I was like, I'm about to leave. And then my midwife came in and she was like, oh, your blood work. And I was like, yeah. And then that's like, even though I had kind of like been prepared, and at least here, they send all your blood work to like this portal on your phone or like the internet. So I got my blood work the same time that my midwife did. So, and I was just sitting there scrolling through my phone. So I had seen my blood work and I was like, this is not good. And I work in veterinary medicine, so I know all of the gist of the blood work and stuff. I don't quite know like what the normal values are in people, but I know that what my numbers were not good. And so I was already freaking out, and I was freaking out even more that it like my midwife had came in and it had like become real. And at that point, I was nervous to be induced anyway, because also on TikTok you hear a lot of negative induction stories and stuff like that. And even me knowing people, like their inductions took a few days, or they ended up in emergency C-sections or stuff like that. And it's like, I didn't really want to be induced at all. I was really hoping for like a spontaneous labor or something like that, but that way.
Yeah. What was your induction process like?
So that was crazier. So right when they decided to induce me, I think my appointment was at like 9 or 10 in the morning or something like that. By the time I got to the hospital, it was like 11. And then they started Pitocin at 2:30 p.m. And at that point, I was 36 weeks. I was already 3 centimeters dilated and 80% of pace. And so they didn't have to do any of like the cervical like ripening, anything like that. They were just able to start Pitocin. And so they did that at 2:30, and then my daughter was born at 7:06 p.m. Like literally.
Oh my God, girl, you're made to have babies.
It was like 4 hours. By like 6:30, I was like, this really hurts. And so I had asked for the epidural, because I was sitting there and I was like, I cannot do this for like more hours. Like, but they were going to check me, but then my midwife was like, oh, let's just give her the epidural. We'll check her afterwards. I wish they would have checked me beforehand, because I had sat through the epidural and the nurse anesthetist was like having trouble. Like I would only feel it in my left leg. So she was trying to adjust it, but it just wasn't working out. So she was like, I think I got it. So I was like, okay. And then at this point it's like 6:55 and I start to not feel well, and I'm like getting lightheaded and feel like I'm going to throw up. And they think that my blood pressure is dropping. So they start to like really check my blood pressure. And it had dropped a little bit, but like just to normal. Like it wasn't that crazy. Well, then I started feeling like I have to push. And the nurses are like, what? They were like, no way. And I was like, no, I was like, I have to push. And then my body started involuntarily pushing. So like my midwife comes running in, and then my daughter was born at like right after that. Like it was literally happened so fast. And she thinks it was all like my daughter was small, but also like my blood pressure was high, and she thinks that my body was trying to just get this baby out so like I
Mm-hmm.
could start to get better. But it was not what I expected. I expected to be there for like in labor for days or like take a long time. And I was also really nervous to push for a long time because everybody tells you like first time moms, like push for a long time, like,
Mm-hmm.
2 hours. I was really nervous about that, but didn't happen like that. Just she kind of flew right out.
Isn't it crazy how first of all, you mentioned like you just kind of knew you weren't going home. It's like that maternal instinct and your baby's not even here. And you just like, I cannot stress enough how important it is to listen to that gut feeling and your intuition. But then also in the next breath, like our bodies, when they say,
Yeah,
your body knows what to do. And yeah, in situations like myself, I ended up in C-sections. I was like, my body is not built to push out a baby. So it was like something that was hard for me to wrap my head around. So like, oh, my body's just supposed to be able to do it. But then in situations like that, where your body's like, this baby needs to come out, I am not okay. Like, and then it just does it.
yeah.
Like
It
it just,
it's so crazy how I and my nurse was trying to get me to stop pushing, and I couldn't. Like my body was
girl,
just
I can't.
I was like, I can't. I was like, she's coming out. And thank God, like, my midwife was available and able to, like, come in at that point. Otherwise, like, the nurses would have delivered the baby.
Oh,
It's crazy.
like, yeah, so crazy. When I was in antepartum, I had one roommate that was there with preeclampsia, and I don't think it was until that moment that I realized maybe how severe and like scary it can be. And her baby girl had the IUGR too because of that. Like her body just like almost stopped supplying the baby because like
Yeah.
her blood pressure was so high.
Yeah.
I didn't even recognize her in the NICU after when she had her baby because it was like the swelling and she was so symptomatic.
Yeah.
And her baby dropped to like under the 10th percentile. So they delivered to, I think she was like just about 30 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like our bodies, like they can't supply both
Yeah.
parties 100% of the time, right? And things like that. And like you don't like she had never had it with her other children. And so then to all of a sudden kind of have this shock and there's nothing you can do about it. Like she was on so many medications and stuff. And then just to think about someone not having those symptoms, like it's just like looking back, you're like, oh my goodness. What were the kind of things that you noticed maybe after looking back that you were like, oh, maybe that was kind of hinting at something going on?
Yeah. So I think the overall feeling of me not feeling well was the biggest sign that I probably should have brought up. Now, even though, like, I think they caught the help as soon as they could that day, like, because I just had the blood work done on Monday and I was fine. But I think there were definitely signs that something was going wrong beforehand, and I wish I would have just, like, said something like me, just not feeling well. I would get dizzy a lot, and I work overnight shifts at the vet hospital. And I would just like almost feel like I was gonna pass out a few times, like if I was up doing stuff like really busy. And I think it was from my blood pressure, like getting high. But at that point I wasn't checking my blood pressure that frequently because I didn't know like that it was getting high. And I would also throw up randomly, which was super weird for me. Like even during my first trimester, I was super nauseous and no appetite, but I almost never threw up. So the fact that I started throwing up in the third trimester was just odd. And I should have paid more attention to that. And I did have headaches, but Maryland, it's cold. The weather is literally like insane. So I always thought it was like my sinuses or stuff like that because I felt it a lot like in my forehead and my face, but I never like chalked it up to something being wrong. But I haven't felt those headaches since I had my baby, so I'm like that probably had like a big thing to do with it. And I also think I did have swelling, but not like that you think of. Like my ankles weren't huge, my legs weren't huge. I did have hitting edema at one point, but I had thought that it was just from me being on my feet all day, and then I lay down in bed and my dog was laying on me. and his leg had like left an indent on my leg. And I was like, that's really weird. But it had gone away the next day. But occasionally I would like press into my leg and like my fingerprints would still be there. And I'm like, I was like, that's just like not right. But I never brought it up, and it, like, because it would go away, and then by the time I got to my appointment, like, we'd be talking about so much other stuff, so I would forget about it. And then now looking back, I'm like, that was definitely a sign. And I for sure know that like I had swelling somewhere because my baby was only 4 pounds, 15 ounces at birth, and then like your placenta and fluid, like weigh a certain amount. But I had dropped almost 20 pounds after I gave birth to her, and I did not gain much weight during my pregnancy at all. So I think I was like swelling at like some places, like maybe in my face or like I don't know, my thighs or something. Someplace I didn't notice, but I think some of like all the weight I lost had to be like swelling and like fluid retention of some sort.
Yeah.
But those were like the main signs that I think I missed, like the swelling, headaches, dizziness, nausea, and like vomiting, just like stuff that wasn't normal for me. I should have had brought up like sooner, but I didn't.
Again, it's so hard when it's like first time pregnancy or even subsequent pregnancies. Like they can all be so different.
Yeah.
And even as a nurse, like there's sometimes in my pregnancy, I'm like, I noticed this, but it's probably nothing. It's probably normal because I'm pregnant. And then like hindsight 2020, yeah, I delivered a 28-weeker because I had BV. So it's just like those things. And it's like, yeah, okay, I should have went in and got it checked again. But like I personally get so in my head about it. Like I don't want to be a nuisance. I don't want to be annoying, being like, oh, this girl's back.
Yeah.
But it's like in pregnancy, you can never be too sure.
Yeah.
And again, that gut feeling, that intuition, you just have to chase it and advocate.
For sure. Like definitely my next pregnancies, I will be that person that like if I feel off or something, I will be calling them. At least like my OB literally has like a on-call line where you talk to like the midwives or the OBs, like if you feel like you have a problem. I should have just done that. Like I should have just called them and like, this is what's happening, or I should have just like talked to them about it at my appointment. But it was so like out of sight, out of mind, and very much like I would look it up on Google or Reddit, which is the worst. And like so many other people were experiencing the same thing. So I'm like, oh, this is normal for the end of pregnancy. Like I already was having like bad pelvic pain and stuff like that. So I was like, this is all normal, like for the end. Like I'm almost like about to give birth and stuff like that. But it's not always normal. So that's like something I know now is like even if it's normal for somebody else, it may not be normal for you. So it's better off to just like call in or go in and get it checked out or something like that because something could be going on.
What did your girl require any like extra care when she was born? What did that kind of look like?
Yeah, so she didn't. So we weren't sure how much she was going to weigh. I was warned that not really warned, but like I was told by my midwife that usually 36-weekers do pretty well. However, there is always a chance that they have to take her to the NICU for like either oxygen or stuff like that, depending on how she comes out. And they were like, we don't know how small she's going to be. Coincidentally, though, that day when I had my BPP, she measured 4 pounds, 15 ounces on the ultrasound. So when I had her and she was that exact same weight, she came out screaming. She was breathing fine. The only thing is she had a low temperature right when she had come out, and after we did like golden hour and stuff, so they put her in the little incubator, and that brought her temperature up. And then they were checking her blood sugars a lot more frequently than they would, I think, like a normal like full-term baby. And her blood sugars were normal throughout, and I had to supplement with donor milk at the time because my milk hadn't come in. They didn't want to just wait to see because they didn't want her blood sugar to drop. So I was supplementing, and that seemed to help a lot with her blood sugar, but she didn't require any NICU time or any extra care. We did end up staying in the hospital. This was a Thursday, and we were both discharged on Sunday. I had to stay because my blood pressure had continued to be high after I gave birth, so I had to be started on blood pressure meds and stuff like that. But she had dropped a significant amount of weight. I guess it's like it's normal for them to drop weight after birth, but because she was so tiny, they were concerned. She had dropped to 4 pounds, 8 ounces. So they wanted to keep her there an extra day just to make sure she didn't drop like that same percentage of weight. And she didn't. But we were both there for like 4 days or so, and that was her main concern, was just keeping her weight up. And then she had started to gain weight I had an appointment that following Tuesday with her pediatrician, and she had been like 4 pounds 10 ounces, so she was kind of going back up. But no extra care, anything like that, which I'm extremely thankful for, because that's something that I was really nervous about. And the hospital that I delivered at, they were only a level 2 NICU. I think they were like only considered like a nursery, really. So like if she needed extensive care, she would have had to been transferred to a different hospital. So I was really hoping that we didn't have to get to that point.
At the hospital you delivered at, did you have the option to supplement with donor milk versus formula, or do they automatically kind of do the donor milk? Yeah.
I had the option if I wanted to do formula or donor milk, and I was lucky enough that they had a lot of donor milk there, that they have a lot of moms who are able to donate there. And I'm not against formula or anything like that, but if she was able to get breast milk, then I wanted her to be able to get that. And by the time we left the hospital Sunday, my milk had slowly started to come in. But I did have to supplement with formula like my first time home, because they don't sell the donor milk. Mm-hmm. So that Sunday night, I had to give her formula, and then my milk had fully come in on Monday. So then I didn't have to give formula anymore. I've just been breastfeeding since then.
Which is pretty good that your milk came in kind of that quickly after, you know, your body is obviously under so much stress and stuff like that. And
I was really worried about it. And even the lactation consultant, they were like, sometimes it can take a while for your milk to come in, like almost up to a week, like especially after your body has been through this much. And I was like, oh gosh, I was like, what? I was a big like worry about like breastfeeding and stuff like that. Like I wanted it to work out so bad, and I'm glad it did, but I was very concerned about it.
I'm always the same way too. I'm just like, I love it so much. Yeah. And you know, if I had to formula feed, I would, but I'm like, my boobs are the sole reason that he's alive and thriving. Like, I'm just obsessed with it. Yeah. And so that was always super important to me. And like with us being in the NICU, that was the first time that I'd ever been offered donor milk. And I was almost like a little bit weird about it at first. I'm like, maybe he's going to get like some other chick's milk, but like, some other mom's milk. But then, you know, like, okay, well, whatever. Like, hopefully mine just comes in quick. But it's nice to have like the support of the lactation consultants and stuff like that, right? Yeah. I always love like hearing about like that golden hour and things like that. So for any first time moms listening, what did your kind of golden hour look like? What were your goals for that?
So to start off, like I didn't really have a birth plan at all, which I'm very glad that I did not, because it would have all gone to shit pretty much if I did. But I knew that I wanted delayed cord clamping and golden hour, which is actually like the standard of care at the hospital that I deliver at. Like they do golden hour and delayed cord clamping for everybody, unless something were to go wrong or they needed like to get your baby to NICU or something like that. So golden hour, it was so nice. I had like felt like crap before I was about to deliver. Like I really thought I was like about to die or something. And then she had been delivered. She came out and I instantly felt better. And her cord was really short. So like they couldn't even lay her on my chest right away because she wouldn't reach. So they had waited for her cord to turn white, and then they clamped it, and then they laid her on my chest. And it's like, I don't even know how to describe the feeling really. It was just like such a surreal feeling of like, I just carried this baby for like, it was only like 8 months at this point, but it's like now she's here and like she's screaming, and then like all of your hormones are kind of going crazy. Like I got the shaking afterwards, and I was just like laying there shaking, and everybody was like so happy, and they were like my mom was there, my husband was there, and like the nurses were trying to like get everything situated, because at that point nobody knew I was about to have a baby, like because it happened so fast. So there was only my one nurse in there, so all the nurses had to come in and they were kind of helping, but I can't even describe the feeling of like seeing her for the first time, her laying on my chest, and then kind of like after the initial, you know, like shock of everything and like you calm down a little bit. It's just such a nice feeling. Like I can't describe it, but it's just like so nice having her there, and they let her breastfeed right away, and she latched right away, which is
Isn't that incredible?
yeah. And I was like, how does she know like how to do this? And they also warned me that like because she's so young and like or so little that she may not latch right away and stuff like that, but she did. And like literally like in that golden hour we got to breastfeed. She was like under the blankets and stuff to keep her warm, and it was just so nice to like have that and like know that like I was doing okay and that she was doing okay. It's just like a feeling I can't describe until you kind of feel it. But
You're so right.
it's literally like probably one of like the best feelings in the world, I would say.
It's crazy too, like just that regulation of that skin to skin, right? And not only for babe, but for mom.
Yeah.
And like, I think that was one of the things I hated the most was the shakes. I'm like, I was literally vibrating. I'm like, can someone just like tell my body to chill?
Yeah.
But just, yeah, that regulation and just, yeah, you finally meet this baby. Did you know your gender before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Even like either way, it's so incredible. But I, oh, that just like gives me chills thinking about it.
I I don't remember like everything from the birth. Like I feel like it's like all a blur.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that, and I remember just like feeling so relieved that like despite everything, like in that moment, everything had gone okay. And then after all the hormones and stuff, like after I stopped shaking, it was just like her and I, and it was just like so hard to like describe to like love my husband, but like so hard to describe to like him like exactly how I was feeling at that time because it was just like for so long it was just me and this little baby in my belly, and like I was the only one who like could feel her kick inside and stuff like that, and then it's like there she is, and like so somebody that only I've known, like everybody else knows now, so it's just like such a crazy feeling. I can't even like describe it, but I wish that everybody, like all moms, can like feel that way, like when they give birth for the first time. And I am excited to feel it again. Like I hope that I'm able to get pregnant again and like have a birth like that because it's a really nice feeling.
I always struggled to like sharing her after, and I'm like, or not just her, all of my babies. But I'm like, what do you mean I have to share now? I remember like having my first daughter, and yeah, when we got to the recovery room, them just like putting her on the breast, and she just like didn't stop. And the fact that these little babies are just wired and designed to know how to bring milk in, to have that suckle reflex, just to like do it. And I know not all babies do. Some moms definitely struggle with that. But in my personal case, yeah, I was just like, what? Like, how do they know to do that? Even when I had my 28-weeker, the LC came in and she was like, oh, are you wanting to breastfeed? I'm like, yeah. She goes, okay, flips him on. And I'm like, sorry? Like, he's 1/4 of the size of my breast right now. And he was just wrestling it. And I'm like, but again, they just know.
That's crazy.
Yes.
When they're that tiny.
Yeah, it was, yeah, very surreal.
Yeah.
Do you have lots of like hospital choices around where you are, or was that kind of the closest one that you could
It
have chose?
was the closest one, and it's like it was a public hospital here, and I was actually concerned like and at the beginning of my pregnancy, like I feel like all the hospitals, like you hear like horror stories and stuff like that, and people are like, don't go here, don't go there, and I was like I don't have to go here, but the other hospitals that I would go to would be in like Baltimore, like the bigger hospitals like John Hopkins and stuff like that. But that's like an hour and a half to 2 hours away from me, and like I wouldn't, even in my situation, like I wouldn't have made it there, like I wouldn't have been able to go. So I kind of just told myself like I would be okay at this hospital, and I was like I trust their care and stuff like that, and I trusted my OBs and midwives even more now after everything that happened. But I only had that choice of that hospital, really, if I wanted to like stay close, because they're like 10-15 minutes away from me. And I'm glad I had stayed there, and I think that like you don't know until you like experience it, but like I trust them all even more now than I did before. So it's like I would recommend anybody to deliver there, and I know not everybody like has the same experience, but like overall I feel like, I mean, they took good care of me. So
Yeah. Yeah, especially given your circumstances, right?
Yeah.
What was your husband like? How did he explain the feeling of like meeting your daughter for the first time? Has he like gone through that with you?
Not really. I look back at pictures because after I had her and my midwife had to manually kind of pull the placenta out because to get it out right away because that's kind of the thing that would start making me better.
Mm-hmm.
So after that and after golden hour and stuff, and then like they were like, "Do you want to hold her to my husband?" And he took her, and then they had to start me on magnesium and stuff like that, which is like a whole other thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I have pictures of him holding her for the first time, and you can just see like the tears in his eyes. And it was a really good feeling for me to see because I was always thinking I was like I hope he feels the same way about her that I do. Like I've known her this whole pregnancy and stuff like that, but it's like he doesn't know her yet, so I'm like I really hope that that love is there and that bond and stuff like that. And it's so crazy just watching like the person like you fell in love with become a father.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the craziest thing. He's such a good dad to her. And he loves her so much. So I'm like, it's just that's also like such a good feeling. But we haven't really talked about like him meeting her for the first time and stuff like that. I feel like he's so hard to like get his feelings out of him and for him to like
Girl,
talk about.
same.
But I can just see like from the pictures, like he had tears in his eyes and he was like just like full of love. And he even when I was in the hospital, he would be like, "Can I hold her?" Because I feel like I did skin to skin so much in the hospital. Like it made me feel so nice when I did it. Like, and I had realized that after I was there, like after I got off the magnesium and like she got a little like fussy. And so at that point, I just had like my nursing bra on and I was able to change out of the hospital gown. And they always told me to undress her for feedings for the first like little bit because to keep her stimulated and stuff like that. So I would take her swaddle off and then like I realized that she really likes skin to skin and I was like, this is like extremely comforting for me. So I
Mm-hmm.
really did that like the majority of time in the hospital and my husband did it too. And yeah, but it's just watching the person you love become a dad is like another like top feeling.
I know, and it's so crazy too, because like, yeah, you said like, well, obviously you grow the baby, and like the maternal bond is like
Yeah.
different than a father bond, right? It just is. And to see, yeah, that like that's the first time I feel like they really connect, and then it's really real, especially with the first baby, right? Like they've never experienced it before, and then all of a sudden there's this little human that's 50% each of you's, and it's so special. How long were you guys together before you had your daughter?
So we got married in 2018. So it was like 6 years this year, I
Oh my
think.
goodness.
7 years maybe. Do the math. But we were together since high school, really. So we were friends in high school, and then I had graduated, and he was a year behind me. And then we finally got together like the summer after I graduated in 2017, and then he ended up joining the military, which I already knew he was doing and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so he went through boot camp, all the training and stuff, and then we had gotten married because I was like, nothing is keeping me here in Maryland. I was like, I'm not going to school at the moment. Like, and he had gotten stationed in California, and I was like, long distance is something that I'm like gonna struggle with. I was like, I can't do it. So we ended up getting married with plans of me moving there with him after training and stuff. And I did. I moved to California in March of 2018, I believe it was, and or no, it was 2019. And we lived in California for 4 years, and then he got out of the military, and then he came back. So, and then we
It's
came
so
back here.
special.
Yeah, it's been since high school ever since. So it's kind of crazy how that all worked out too, because everybody's always like young relationships and like military
Yeah.
relationships and stuff like that. But that all worked out, and we were also like, I feel like they kind of pressure like a lot of military couples like have babies and stuff like that, because literally all of my friends like that I met in the military had kids or trying to have kids, stuff like that. But that was just like him and I just didn't really think about it. Like we were so young at that point, and we knew like we wanted to like go and do some more stuff and stuff like that. So we did, and then we came back home, and we have been back in Maryland since 2022. But we were planning on like start to like really talking about it and like start trying probably like later last summer. But then I got pregnant in May. It just kind of happened, and it all worked out like the way it should have been. Like I very much believe like everything happens for a reason, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it all worked out in the way that it should have, and
And I think regardless of the relationship, how it starts, what, like how young you are, how old you are, career wise, like it's all work.
yeah,
And like you have to, it's a choice, right? And good for you guys for like waiting. I know it was like kind of unplanned, the pregnancy too, but waiting until you guys were ready and
yeah,
not just doing it because of the outside pressures, right? And
yeah.
you know, being a mom and being parents and raising these humans, I truly believe is one of the world's greatest gifts. But some days I like look at my kids, I'm like, I will never just be Lex ever again. Like, I'll always be somebody's mom, you know? And it's like, I don't necessarily even remember what life was like before them, but I had my youngest, same thing. Very, very much a surprise. I was 23. My now husband was a original one night stand, but
No, yeah.
we'll get into that
Oh,
another time. God love him, but yeah, it's just so crazy how it all works out. And you know, I truly believe they come when they're supposed to. Like she's taught me so much and essentially forced me to grow up. And
yeah.
so here we are doing the thing. But um was like, did your husband know kind of how to support you when things started to, I don't want to say go south with your pregnancy, but like with your health and things like that? Like, or was it a very helpless time for him? Did he kind of know how to support you?
I think he definitely struggled with it because I think at the time, like, he didn't really know what was going on. And, like,
Mm-hmm.
even, like, my mom and stuff, like, explaining it to, like, people outside of, like, the field, I guess, because even though I'm not in human medicine, I understood the blood work and kind of what was happening and stuff like that, but, like, nobody else really knew the severity of it, I think. And even after the fact, like, the nurses would come in and they would be like, oh, you were really sick. And my husband's like, what really? I'm like, dude, I'm like, my blood work was messed up. I'm like, it was scary. Like, it could have been a lot worse. But I think it was just like, I think I felt very like isolated in the moment, or very just like kind of alone. Even though I had like all of these people supporting me, it was hard for them to really like be there for me in the ways that I needed them, because it's like they didn't really know what was going on, and like they weren't kind of going through like everything, because I was just sitting there thinking like, what if my blood work doesn't get better? What if it keeps getting worse? What if like they can't control my blood pressure? Like all of the things like that they kind of warn you about, like I was just thinking about, and it was just hard, I think, for anybody to kind of support me in that way. And he was trying. He was there for me and like trying, but like in the way that I needed, and for him to like fully understand, like he was having a hard time with it. And he definitely got upset like when we got the IUGR diagnosis, and he was like, well, is she gonna be okay? And like asking all these questions, and I'm like, because I was like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just a thing that we have to like wait and see at this point, like keep going to the ultrasounds and stuff like that. But he's so hard to get stuff out of him on how he's feeling. So it's just like I would try to sit there and talk about it, and he's like, well, he's like, there's really nothing we can do. He's like, we just have to sit and wait. And I'm like, oh, I was like, can't we just talk about it? I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it's happening. I was like, to me, and I was like, I don't know how to feel, but I think it's just extremely hard for like your support system too, especially like your partners or husbands or whoever, like for them to find ways to support you, like especially going through like all of that stuff, and like you feel your own emotions, and like you feel however like you need to feel, but I think it's hard for them too to kind of really like understand what's going on and find a good way to support you in the ways that you need.
And I think that's anybody too, right? Unless you've been through it.
Yeah.
And again, that's where this community comes in. And it's like nobody knows better than somebody. Yeah, all of our experiences are subjective and different and unique, but just to be able to relate in some way, or even if it was like, you know, a friend in the medical field that, you know, works labor and delivery or something like that, to have those people. But
Yeah.
yeah, to put yourself into someone else's shoes or try to understand, like the medical world isn't, you know, black and white. It's very, like, it's hard for people to wrap their head around, and especially like males, they don't ever grow a baby. You
Yeah.
know, like it's just not something they're going to do.
Yeah.
And so to try to explain that to them. And, you know, even this morning, like when I was just like very emotional, my husband's like, I don't really understand. Like, me neither. And it's like, I almost get frustrated. Like, just leave me alone then. Like, if you don't know what to do. But it's, we all just experience things so differently. And, you know, it's like my husband's the same way. Like, good Lord, I'd rather do anything else than try to get him to talk about his feelings. But then I'm just like, come on, man. Like, let's just relate. Like, we're both going through this. And I think it's important. And so oftentimes, I know he doesn't listen to this podcast, so I can talk about this, but my friends and I will like specifically have conversations in front of him. And I'm like, I know you're listening. And so it's like, as long as like you can hear these things, then maybe they'll kind of sit in and whatever. And I know he doesn't listen because I asked him the one day and he's like, well, no, it's not like really my thing. I'm like, no shit.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Like, especially immediately postpartum was rough for me. Like, literally, like my first week home from the hospital and like even the first day home, I was like so scared. I don't know what to do with this little baby that they just sent me home with. And all the emotions kind of just hit me that week. Like, I feel like I was crying all the time. And he was like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, literally, I'm just like sitting there and I just start crying. And he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I have no idea. I was like, I can't even tell you how I'm feeling right now. It's like all of the feelings happening at once. Like, I'm happy and I'm sad. And it's like, that was crazy. The hormones, like, right after is nuts.
It's like you can't describe it unless you've been through it, you know, and I've been through it and I don't even think I can describe it. I'm just like, it's crazy. Like, you don't even recognize yourself.
No.
And then plus learning this new human, plus if you're breastfeeding, then that's another set of hormones. And then you're not sleeping and you're, you know, processing what you just went through, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, right? And to mix all that together and then also try to explain to your partner everything, it's like, good luck.
Yeah, that part was hard. Like, he just wouldn't understand. I didn't even know what was going on, so I'm just like, I have no idea. So that like first week was hard, but got through it, and it's like gradually gotten better. I think like postpartum is just like a whole journey in itself. I feel like.
And you said your daughter's only 2 months old?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're like only 2 weeks past your 6-week checkup. I can't even believe I have you on the podcast right now. Like, girl, why are you napping right now?
Well, I've been so lucky. So like, I splurged and I bought the snoo bassinet because I was not sleeping she was not sleeping at night. I was not sleeping at night. Like, I couldn't set her down for more than like 30 minutes in her other bassinet. And I was like, I can't do this. I was like, she would sleep fine on me. And like, I was like, I can't. Co-sleeping, I don't have anything against it, but it just scares me. Like, I just don't want anything to happen. So I was against like me doing it. I was like, I don't want to do it. I was like, I don't want something scary to happen. So I went on Facebook Marketplace and somebody was selling it like 15 minutes away from me. I went and I bought it. It's changed my life. She literally sleeps like 5-6 hour stretches at night in it, and she only wakes up to eat, and then she's up for like, she woke up at 8 a.m. this morning and she was up for like 2 hours and she ate, and now she's like napping again. But it's literally like completely changed my life. So anybody that wants to snoo, get the snoo, because maybe some babies don't like it, I've heard, but she really likes it. I feel like she really likes that constant like movement and rocking and stuff. I really hope getting her to her crib at that point will not be bad, because but
I think they grow out of it too, though, right? Like, they go in stages. And I know Case right now, he's still like, and I don't understand how babies can tell if you're standing or sitting. Is your little girl like that? Because it makes zero sense to me. And he's very much a contact napper and things like that. And I'm trying to just enjoy it and whatever. But it's like, how does that transition work? But I think essentially, the older they get, the more they change and that kind of thing. And they regulate those little nervous systems. And, you know, they just, and too, like, technically your girl's a little preemie, like a late term preemie, but like, they're still so immature and it takes a while for them to, you know, kind of catch up. And like, I think that's why Case preferred the skin to skin so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, being a NICU baby too, all he did was skin to skin for 6 weeks while we were there. But it's, yeah, it's so hard to expect what these little babies are going to like and not like. And I think it's easy to fall into the materialistic aspect of having a baby. And so, you know, like you said, some babies love it, some babies don't. And I think even with baby swings and baby chairs, it's like, I think I have one of everyone that's out there. And it's like, well, which one are you going to like?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've seen a lot about this news. I did not, but I seen a girl post one, I think it was yesterday. It was like a TikTok, and oh, it did look so soothing. I'm like, okay, where's the adult size of that?
I know. It's so nice, and she loves it, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad that, like, me and my husband are able to get, like, some sleep now, because even, like,
Mm-hmm.
I would let her sleep on my chest and stuff, like, at nighttime, and I would, like, doze off, and I would wake up, and I'm like, oh god, I was like, I can't do this. But
Yeah.
she contact naps during the day, literally, like, all the time. She only sleeps in the snoo, like, at nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
I just, like, don't want, like, it's just so comforting, like, when she falls asleep on me and stuff like that. I can't. One day I'll put her down for a nap, but
Enjoy it right now, though. Yeah, I know. Even when my girlfriends come over, they're like, this is the most calming thing. I'm like, I know. I could sit in my rocking chair with him forever. And like,
yeah.
I love hanging out with him when he's awake,
Yeah.
but there is something about snuggling in with a sleeping baby, like, especially one that you grew for, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, depending on how early you were.
Yeah. It's just so, being a mom is just so crazy.
I know, and it's so special. And I just think back, like you said you were 25. Yeah, I think it was 23, 25. I don't know. She's 5. I know I must have been 25, 24. Anyways, I just like felt so lost and like didn't really know what I wanted. And like, I'm still very much a baby myself, I feel like. And so it's like so daunting. And then, yeah, when like your pregnancy doesn't go textbook, your delivery doesn't go textbook. And then it's like you're trying to put all these pieces together. And, there's so many different aspects of motherhood you have to learn. And, I always think like now that I've had subsequent pregnancies and babies, I just realize how different everything is. And it's so fun to hear other people's stories. And I think, yeah, anybody listening just to your story here today specifically, like that advocation piece is so important. And if you even have an inkling that something's abnormal or you feel off, which is a hard thing because every day is a different day in pregnancy.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't be afraid to be, in quotations, that annoying patient.
For sure.
Like, be the annoying patient.
Anything is like out of the norm for you, like, because something could be going on and you don't know it, and it's just like so important to advocate for yourself. And even like if your doctor like is kind of pushing you off to the side or something like that, get a new one. Like go get a
yes.
or like take yourself to labor and delivery if they're not taking you seriously, or like drive yourself the extra like however long to another hospital. Like I think it's just so important. Like you got to find somebody that advocates for you, because it's your life and your baby's life at that point, especially if something is like going wrong.
Yeah. You can never be too protective.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think sometimes, and I know I did this too, is put my health care professionals on a pedestal and almost forget that they're just human beings.
Yeah.
And that, yes, you never want them to make a mistake, but the reality is sometimes they do. And, we have to, keep them on their toes and really push for the answers that we feel comfy with. And if we don't get that, then that accountability piece has to come into play, right? And, as a parent, I think the last thing you ever want to do is look back and be like, oh, well, I wish I would have done this, or I should have done this. And I think just to, really push in the moment. And yeah, there's one other question I had. I'm always so invested in this public or private healthcare, because in Canada, obviously, we have universal healthcare. You said public hospital. Is that different than your guys' like private healthcare?
I like don't know how to describe it. I think it's like I don't even know. I don't even know myself really like what it is. So it's like we have our healthcare, and then it's like what is it called? Our hospital is owned by like a super big company. So it's not like a like private hospital or just like our city hospital. It's like this company owns like almost all of the doctors' offices, like where I live pretty much. And like a big corporation. That's what I'm thinking of. Is like
Oh, okay.
kind of what owns it. And so like there's like a hospital like 30 minutes or so away from me that's like I guess it's like a private hospital. I don't really know, but it's like not owned by a corporation or anything like that. And a lot of people like to go there, I guess, because they don't have like all the corporate stuff or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just like same as like our healthcare. I think I don't really know. It's like it confuses me so much, but
I know. I'm so invested in the different things, and like,
yeah.
the world's changing so much every day. I just am so curious as to how it's working everywhere else. But what would be like the most important piece of advice? I'm hitting the sunshine hour here at my house. This is my daily golden hour.
Yeah.
What would be your biggest piece of advice for a mom kind of like finding herself in your situation, whether that's the HELP, that's the IUGR, it's induction, like what screams to your heart?
Definitely, again, advocate for yourself. That's like the biggest thing. And just like find people with similar stories. Like that was something that was really hard for me in the moment. Like I was scrolling through TikTok as I was being induced, like trying to find similar stories, positive stories. There's really
Mhm.
not many out there on help. Like even though I'll be scrolling through TikTok and like I'll see somebody comment that they had HELLP syndrome and stuff like that, but not a lot of people talk about it. And it's not like a super common thing either. Like it's quite rare when you think about it. But just like finding people that have been through something similar is like I would think has helped me a lot. Like I had a friend of mine who would have thought like I worked with her in California and I haven't talked to her very much since I moved back to here, but I had posted on an Instagram story right after I had my daughter about HELLP syndrome and stuff like that, and she had slid up and she was like, this happened to me when I had my baby like a year ago, and I was like, shut up. I was like, that's crazy. And then like to kind of get into the healthcare and like advocating for yourself, her story completely different as me because her healthcare providers pushed her off. Like she had all of the symptoms of it. She had swelling, she had epigastric pain, like literally she was not feeling well at all, and she went to her OB appointment and they were like, oh, just drink more water, like this is like normal for the end of pregnancy. She was also 36 weeks at the time. And she ended up having to take herself to labor and delivery because of how crappy she felt. And her blood pressure was like 180 over like 110 or something like that. It was
Oh my
crazy. And
God.
she had HELLP. Her blood work was really bad on admission. And so she had to have an emergency C-section. And she was in the hospital for like almost a week afterwards. She was like 8 days or something in the hospital because they couldn't control her blood pressure. And I'm like, her whole experience with it compared to mine is so different because it's like, my blood pressure wasn't as bad, but like our blood work was very similar and stuff like that. But like the care we received is so different. Like,
Mhm.
and she still like lives on the West Coast, but I'm just like, it's just so crazy to think about. Like, her doctors kind of pushed her off to the side, didn't care about it. As far as like mine did, like I feel like mine doctors like advocated for more for myself than like I advocated for myself because I didn't even know anything was going on. So it's just like crazy to think how different like providers are and stuff like that, and
Mhm.
like, what they think is concerning. And even like when I was in the hospital talking to the nurses, they were like, we get like bashed a lot for kind of like screening for preeclampsia and stuff so often because it's something that like they check everybody for. But she's like, this is exactly why we do it because it's like if they wouldn't have like checked my blood work, then they wouldn't have known what was going on. And all I had was high blood pressure. Like they could have just been gestational hypertension and send me on my way.
Mhm.
But it's just crazy to think about.
I know, looking back on all of my experiences, I'm always like, I would much rather have a provider that is like, you know, very anxious and like always checking things and triple checking and because yeah, these hidden things can come up. And so when like the resources are available to be able to do that, let's do it. Like I always, like I'm a firm believer. And I'm just thinking back to like a conversation I had with a girlfriend last weekend, and she was saying that yeah, she like had a gut feeling that her liver function was off and this and that and the other thing. Went to a prenatal appointment, the doctor, because they like rotate, same as where you are.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, I've never heard of that. And she's like, okay. And so then she called back when she knew another doctor was in there, and he was like, oh yeah, come in. And now it's like repeat blood work every couple weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's so not common. And so and obviously that proves there that she's like, oh, I've never heard of that. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, why are we doing babies then?
Yeah.
Like
No.
it's just those things. And there's like I always say, it's 2025. Medicine is always evolving. If we need to be screening for these things, let's do it. Like the resources are there. Yes, money's tight, but like at some point, I think the health of our patients and our babies is ultimately the most important.
Like
And
yeah.
yeah.
Like I really think that like my midwife that day like completely like saved me and my daughter's life, because I don't know if I would have taken myself into the hospital. Like I was checking my blood pressure at home, but like I really didn't feel that off. Like I had woken up the morning that I had her nauseous and lightheaded, and I'd taken my blood pressure and it was high. But I didn't do anything because I already had an appointment that morning, and but my blood pressure had come down before my appointment, and I hope that I would have called my provider or like call my OB or like call labor and delivery or something if I didn't have that appointment. But it's like, I don't know. But like by 5 p.m. that day, like my blood work had almost classified me as class 1 HELLP syndrome, which is the worst it can be. Like I was considered class 2 because my platelets weren't below 50% or 50,000, but I like was going in that direction. And so if I wouldn't have been in the hospital that day, then like my whole like I may not even be here, my daughter may not be here. So it's just like something really like that's the scary thing about it is like what scares me is like learning all this stuff afterwards and knowing that like my situation could have been completely different if it wasn't for the care that I received.
And it's totally human nature to be like, oh, the what ifs, like what if this happened? And I think the most important thing we can do, and granted, I pray that everybody always has a positive outcome, but regardless, is like just to really take those and implement them going forward and use your voice like you are in your TikTok page and getting ready to share all of these things. And are you planning on doing that like a public page? Or you like, what's kind of your goal with that?
That would be my goal. I always have a hard time like sticking with it, I feel like, but I think at this point, like now, like after what I've been through, is now I just want to advocate for it because I feel like so many people don't know about it. And now that I know, like, so many people are shocked by their providers, or they just like don't go get like the care because they think it's really pregnancy and stuff like that. Like now it just makes me want to talk about it more because I don't want anybody to have to either go through what I went through or like in a worst case scenario, like something like that, like when it gets like super scary. I just want people to like know the signs and symptoms, or if they think something is off, go to the doctor, talk to your midwife or your OB about it, because it's like, what are they like? Worst case scenario, they're gonna be like, oh, like you're okay or something like that. Well, that's like best case scenario, but like they're gonna tell you that you're okay. You gotta advocate for yourself, and if you're worried that something's wrong, then take it into your own hands and like take yourself to like another hospital, different provider, something like that. Always trust your gut. That's like the biggest thing. Like I feel like I knew something was wrong, but I'm an anxious person in general, so I was always like mixing it between like, am I just really anxious, or is this actually like a gut feeling? And I do think that like a part of it was a gut feeling.
Well, I will absolutely be keeping my eyes open for your page, and I think, coming from someone who's run a TikTok page, it's very hard to put your like, your creative side into it all the time. But, it's just like taking those moments that when you feel like showing up, show up. And this is something that happened to you. This is your real life, and you know your situation best. And like, it's a beautiful platform to share your truth and connect you with other people. But ultimately, you have to protect yourself and your own peace and that kind of thing too. So just take it day by day with that. And, I think it's a really powerful thing you're doing. And, especially when you're such a small percentage of the population. And then all of a sudden you realize that although it's a very small percentage, there's so many women who can relate and have
And it's so
experienced
crazy, like,
something. And
yeah, like with HELLP syndrome, it's like 0.02% or something of pregnancies have it. That's still a lot of people, though, if you think about it. Like, I don't even do the math, but it's like 200,000 people out of like all the pregnancies that happen. Like, still so many. Like, even though this percentage seems so small, so many people get pregnant a year. So it's like, even though it seems so small, it's a lot of people that like you can lean on for support and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because I know when I was looking into like the uterine rupture and stuff like that, we are like a 0.07%.
Yeah.
And so, but which sounds like so small, and it is. But then, like the amount of messages I get, and they're like, "Oh, well, I had a uterine rupture back whenever," or "I just had a uterine rupture and found your page," things like that. And it's like, yeah, when you put into perspective how many people are having babies,
yeah,
it's like, okay, well, we need to find our 0.07 or 0.02% of people, right? And
like in my due date Facebook group that I was in, there was 10,000 people in there for January.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like, that just really put it into perspective for me of like how many people have babies, like, and it's not only the States, it's like Canada and like other countries like that, but it's like so many people are like having babies and getting pregnant, and it's like really like I was just like a lot of people in just 1 month, like, and that's not everybody, like joins all the Facebook groups and stuff like that. So that's just like counting the people that do. So
isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
Oh, being a mom is just so wonderful. Yeah. And then especially when you can connect with so many other moms and, tell our stories, and I think it's so special.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so incredibly much for sitting down with me today and on a Saturday nonetheless. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Please take a moment and on whatever app you're listening to us on, press that follow button to stay up to date with all future episodes. If you or someone you know are interested in being a guest on the Beyond the Birth Story podcast or a sponsor, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at Beyond the Birth Story podcast and send a message or fill out that contact form. I would love to connect with you. As always, remember to be gentle, kind, and hold space for yourself when you need it.